Hey, remember when they made those Hobbit movies a few years back and people kicked off that like the cynical Hollywood money machine was cranking out like 3 movies and a collective 9 hours of content out of what was arguably a 300-page children's book? Well, this is film number 2 of 5 based on a 128-page piece of tie-in merchandising. Just sit with that for a spell. So, if you've forgotten the first Fantastic Beasts, and, well, let's be honest, does anybody actually remember that movie? So, what you had was a wacky, animals on the loose kind of adventure that also doubled as a stealth Harry Potter prequel. Right up until it decided in the third act that being a Harry Potter prequel was kind of more the priority. And then Johnny Depp turned up as Grindelwald, got sent to prison, the human sidekick Dan Fogel got Lois Laned, and the story was kind of done, really. Now it's a year later, Grindy's broken out of prison, Dan Fogel's got his memory back, Queenie's become Mystique from the X-Men movies, and there's a young Dumbledore. So he's played by Jude Law, and he's apparently the only man alive who can, like, face down and stop Grindelwald. Except he won't, because reasons. Also, Eddie Redmayne is in this movie, so cue the clip.
Why can't you go?
I cannot move against Grindelwald. It has to be you.
Well, I can't blame you. In your shoes, I'd probably refuse to. What? It's late. Good evening, Newt.
Wait, no. Oh, come on. Dumbledore.
I've always had a bit of an ebb and flow relationship with the appeal of Harry Potter, which is, you see a Harry Potter, sorry, not Harry Potter movie, it's Wizarding World, isn't it? Because that's all been like rebranded now, Wizarding World, because 2018, and you got to compete in them franchise wars. So the way it would always work is you'd see a Harry Potter movie, you wouldn't particularly be that excited about it, but you see it because it's out, and then, like 6 months, 9 months later, you watch it on DVD maybe once, and then you forget about it until the next one rolls around. They're good, they're not great, they're fine, I guess. But, they appeal to families and kids, so that kind of is a gap in the marketplace. Anyway, so, turns out the only reason that actually worked is because the movies were themselves basically fun and entertaining, and so they could carry on that kind of longevity. Until you get to The Crimes of Grindelwald, which has no interest in being either of those two things. It's neither entertaining, it's not fun, it's not interesting. Search back through your cinematic Rolodex, meanwhile, and you will genuinely struggle to come up with a studio movie this side of Mockingjay Part 1 that puts this amount of on-screen effort into something that ultimately achieves so little. This is 2 hours and 12 minutes of the most insanely convoluted padding you can fathom. Even Russell T Davies would walk out of this movie. And what's the grand totem being sought by all of it? Literally 2 pieces of plot information, one of which you won't care about, and the other, well, we already knew about, and we're now being made to sit through an entire movie just so that Joe Rowling can, lionize this into canon. You may very well know what I'm talking about, by the way, and if you don't, then you have a life, so congratulations, I don't. So without actually looking into the development history of this quote-unquote series, you'd be forgiven for assuming that absolutely nobody involved in crafting the Fantastic Beasts series past the first installment could muster up literally any excitement for having Eddie Redmayne back for this. The story just ties itself up. The story, by the way, is written by J.K. Rowling again, so, for her own work, but not based on one of her books. The story just ties itself up in what seems like a never-ending series of knots, designed solely to keep Newt Scamander in any way relevant to the action, despite the fact that the filmmakers, the cast, and even the audience are patently more interested in seeing what Jude Law's Dumbledore's going to pull out of his robes at a moment's notice. Redmayne's fine, I guess. He's never made to feel particularly essential to his own franchise, and the whole foppish Matt Smith Doctor Who thing just feels increasingly dated the further and further we move away from Matt Smith being Doctor Who, so, it's a good 5 years out of date at any given point. There's numerous points in this where Eddie Redmayne and his merry band of Scoobies have to like infiltrate a facility, or they have to like break into an office and not be seen. And you kind of feel guilty all the way through, like the reason they're allowed to get away with it is just because nobody cares about seeing Eddie Redmayne. It's like the TARDIS, they're just oblivious to him unless they want to see him. Nah, it's all about Johnny Depp and Jude Law. And they're a pair of on-the-name poster stars, pretty much coasting on their heyday here, because they're not really given that much to do. Jude Law's being Jude Law, Johnny Depp's doing that sort of faux Brando thing he's been perfecting for the last 5 years or so. And they're pretty minimal supporting roles that were sort of promised, or threatened, depending on how you see it, that these roles will only like increase in stature for the inevitable third movie, the fourth movie, the fifth movie. All of which you hope will just see a real leap in quality after this. Like maybe if they try really, really hard, they can graduate to, I don't know, bad rather than dull. This is a movie that causes you to genuinely ask the question of yourself, has medical science really moved to the point that we can induce medical comas using only cinematic exposition? The answer is nearly. Nearly indeed. Yeah, so you can't turn a corner in the Crimes of Grindelwald without running into this cavalcade of exposition. All of which includes the usual Roald Dahl for Dummies version of magical terms and this overwhelming need to prequelize every napkin that you spot in the background of a dinner scene in a children's movie nearly 20 years ago. It's pretty much one of those movies. Not one iota of effort is put into actually making this in any way an interesting film, in any way a good time. That being said, if there is a good time to be had, you're probably not going to be able to see it anyway, because the thing is so badly lit, it's all grayed out, it's got this whole ridiculous Instagram filter sepia tone thing going for it, and it all just looks ridiculous. Like, the special effects don't really get a time to shine because they're all in rooms that look like they're lit up by a 40-watt bulb. I mean, think about it. How hard do you actually have to work to make 1920s Paris visually uninteresting? I mean, it would take actual magic, right? I mean, consider the irony there. In the meanwhile, you've got James Newton Howard who shows up here. He's back for doing the score, and there's a couple of those little Potter riffs, but yet again, nothing memorable. His score kind of like sums up this whole endeavor, which is, yeah, it's there. Yeah, it just about does the job. Am I going to remember it? Hell no. Look, the Potterites, or whatever it is they're actually called, are among the most voracious tunneled vision supporters in the entire history of fandom. So they were going to see this whether it sucked or not, and this is going to make $1 billion purely by virtue of branding alone. But outside of franchise adoration, this thing's one of the worst tentpole franchise flicks released this century. I'm not exaggerating. I'd call it Batman v Superman bad, but that at least had like a sense of visible effort running through its steroid-enhanced veins. This is just nonsense. This is like listening to a grandparent try and explain the plot of a Terry Gilliam movie. It goes on for about 4 years, it makes very little sense, and if you get anything out of watching it, then you're on better medication than I am. So, 1 star, slightly more memorable than the first movie, but that's mostly by virtue of being so unfathomably terrible. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, rate, and review.